that too loud?
You better mute it before we say something.
I don't want to make sure we don't say anything.
I can't call you big sexy.
Yeah, you can call me whatever you want.
Yeah, how you doing? Okay.
Okay. I'll turn his on in a minute. And if anything else fails, I've got the handheld. He knows that he can't go past here and there.
Marks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you much. Good morning. On behalf of the Low Country Firefighter Support Team, I welcome you to North Charleston City Council chambers this morning for our for Steve's Surviving the Job program. We've been very fortunate to have Steve become a member of our team several years ago, and he works very hard for us and brings a lot to the table. This is his program, his story. We're excited to help him kick it off. We hope to be doing this in a lot of different places in the communities in the state, and we're glad that you're here to help us do this inaugural program. I'd like to thank Chief Bolano and the Mayor and Council of the City of North Charleston for providing this comfortable and wonderful place. We're excited about you being here. We'll probably have some people joining us along the way because, as you know, we all can't be on time every day. But as I look around the room, I see a lot of great folks here. A little bit of housekeeping across the hallway. There is a bathrooms across the hallway. There's a break room if you want to get something to drink or a snack. We're not allowed to have food in here or drink in here. So we left the break room for you to go over there during the break and get you something to drink if you'd like to. We are proud to have one of our major supporters, Chief Greg Bolano, here this morning to say a few words for us and to open up this program. Chief Bolano.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see such a good crowd both here and this event is being live streamed, so there's people that are joining us through that as well. But wonderful to see so many people here. I want to thank Gerald and the Low Country Firefighter Support Team for hosting this event. We're proud to provide this venue for this first presentation of Surviving the Job, and we certainly expect many more in the future, but we're glad to have the first one here today. Many of us know Steve Gillespie, but for those who may not, Steve's career as a first responder began first as a volunteer in the early 80s, where he responded to a variety of calls, including some tragedies, and he was exposed to really the difficult part of this job. That continued later when he joined FDNY, served for more than 20 years in the Bronx on very busy engine companies and squads. He responded to fires such as Black Sunday, Deutsche Bank, and of course, 9/11, where he was exposed to loss of civilian life as well as loss of his fellow firefighters. Steve served as an instructor for many years, both in the FDNY, also at national conferences such as FDIC, and then joining our department after he retired from FDNY in 2015 to serve as our assistant training officer and helping to run our recruit programs, which he does an outstanding job. Steve's story is really about coming through PTSD to post-traumatic growth. And that's ultimately, that journey is what he's going to share with us today. And it's an incredible journey, a journey of courage and tremendous strength. Many of us know that in 2017, more firefighters died from suicide than from all other forms of line of duty combined. Fire service is in crisis. And in order for us to deal with this issue, we need to talk about this issue. But we've got to get past that stigma. And the best way for us to do it is for bona fide heroes, people with strong credibility, to stand up and share their stories. And that's what we're going to get to experience this morning. Steve, I couldn't be more proud to have you as a member of our department, and I'm very proud of the courage and you're showing today by sharing your story. Please come and do that with us. Thank you, Steve.
Can you hear me? Is this mic on? No? A little louder? Okay, good? We're good? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming today. For those of you that know me, I usually don't have a problem speaking a lot in front of large groups, but the topic that comes today comes with a lot of emotion. So most of the time, it's just me talking about whatever is up on the screen and what happened. This isn't death by PowerPoint, but I want to be able to explain to you some of the things that happened during my career. So. It might be a little long, so we're probably going to take a break about halfway through, but if anybody needs to use the restroom, please feel free to go up and do it anytime. All my recruits who've been through my recruit school know that no falling asleep, right? If you're going to fall asleep, you go stand in the back, okay? Also, I just want to be straightforward. This is true life stuff. This is, there's a lot of audio and some pictures in here that have some language in it. It's real. That's all I'm going to tell you. I can't tell you that this is about stuff where guys died. Okay, and you'll hear that in the video and some of the audio. So we get started. So this is my story and my experience. It's everything about what happened to me over my career, starting in 1983 as 17 years old. It's not scientific, but it's about what happened to me, where I started, and how I got to where I am now. And I'll read this if you guys can't see it, but this is the epitome of what being a firefighter is. I have no ambition in this world but one, and that is to be a fireman. The position may, in the eyes of some, appear to be a lowly one, but we who know the work which a fireman has to do believe that his is a noble calling. Our proudest moment is to save lives. Under the impulse of such thoughts, the nobility of the occupation thrills us and stimulates us to deeds of daring, even of supreme sacrifice. All right. Anybody in the fire service has seen that quote and understand what that means. All right. So I want to start off by saying anything that I talk about today, I didn't make this up. Okay. It came from somewhere else. All right. Everything that I learned has been passed down to me by somebody in the fire service or outside the fire service. Now in the peer counseling realm that I'm in now. But we need mentors. We need people to be able to speak to, and that's a lot what I'm going to talk about at the end, okay? You have to share your experience as a firefighter. That's the only way that we learn. Okay, I was fortunate enough when I got to Squad 41 in 1996 that I worked with some guys, old-timers, that worked through the war years in the South Bronx, that worked through the 70s and the 80s, and they saw a lot of fire duty, and they were able to pass a lot of things down to me, and I was able to take those things. And 75% of what I learned was usually just sitting at the kitchen table, listening to those guys talk about the fires that they went to the night before. It wasn't uncommon for them to go to 2, 3, 4 fires in a night tour back then, and they would all share their experiences about what happened. And later on, I'll talk about recognition, prime decision making, and what I learned came into play at some of the fires that I was at. So if you don't pass this on, it dies. Okay, all of us that are involved in training understand how important this is, and we really take that seriously. The people that take training very seriously understand that we need to share what it is that we have in order for the next generation to get it, right? We just ended a recruit school last week, a week ago today, correct? Some of my recruits are in here, some of my ducklings. If you don't know what the ducklings is, they wear yellow shirts. They wear yellow t-shirts while they're in recruit school. We were doing a building construction tour down in Old Montague Avenue, and it was me walking in front of 20 people with yellow shirts on, and it looked like a father duck walking with a bunch of ducklings. So that's where my ducklings come from. So I truly, honestly believe that this occupation picks you. I don't think that you pick it. I think that whatever way that you find it to this occupation, that's how you get there. I'd like to get to know the audience a little bit. Who's first generation firefighter? Okay. Second generation? It's a family business for a lot of us. Is there anybody beyond second generation, third generation? Third? Fourth generation? Fourth, right. Fifth generation? Okay. So he's the fifth generation chief? Yes? Okay. All right, so it is a family business, right? We see what a great thing this occupation is and how important it is and what it is that we see about it in our family members that makes us want to do this also. So again, knowing the audience, rookies are dinosaurs. Who's got less than a year? Put your hand up, Kyle. All right, who's got 1 to 5 years? 5 to 10? 10 to 20. There we go. 20 to 25? What kind of, sort of? Who's got 25 plus? Over 30? 35. 35, 35, 35, 35, 40, every 40. Chief Munn, are you the old guy in the room? 35. So, we all see stuff like this. We were all, when we were younger, we were this kid, okay? And he doesn't want to do this because it's cool. He wants to do it because he sees what we do to help people, and they want to do it too, all right? So think about all the times that you drive by in a fire truck going down Main Street, or wherever it is that you're in a supermarket getting your meal, or whatever it is, that little kid that comes over and looks up to you because of what it is that you do, all right? We have an obligation to our public to be able to set that example for them, okay? And like it says, they want to be just like you, be worth being. So my career started in Ridgefield, New Jersey. One of my best friends back there. Sorry, anybody, I didn't point you out, but in 1983, when I was a volunteer firefighter in Ridgefield, New Jersey, I was there for 10 years till 1994. That's my dad next to me. My dad was a firefighter in Ridgefield since 1967. I just went to a building construction class up in Columbia the last 2 days, and we were talking about building collapses and bowstring trusses. My dad's first fire was a fire that 5 firefighters died at in Cliffside Park, New Jersey. 5 firefighters from Ridgefield Fire Department went to a mutual aid fire at a bowling alley, and the bow truss roof collapsed and it pushed out one of the sidewalls and it killed 5 of the guys. That was my dad's first fire. So he's had a lot of influence in me in my fire service career. So as a volunteer firefighter, Ridgefield was at the very end of the New Jersey Turnpike, not far from the George Washington Bridge. We would respond to accidents on the New Jersey Turnpike. And it was on the Turnpike which I first witnessed my first fatal accident. Okay? And not knowing what it meant then, because as I'll talk about a lot later, this isn't about what just happened to you. This is about what's happened to you for the last 20 years, last 30 years, right? It could be one incident that affects you. It could be 20. But the last one you went to is the one that really sets you off. So that's what this is about, okay? So sorry for the picture, but that's a really handsome guy right there in the middle. Actually, it's kind of a funny story. This guy I went to high school with, and this is my buddy Steve's brother right there. We all got hired on the police department together. So from 1986 to 1994, I was a police officer, all right? As the police officer in Ridgefield, we were EMTs. When somebody would call the police department, it was way before Central 911 dispatching system. People would call the police department to call for an ambulance, police department, or fire department. And if it was a medical call, the police officers on duty would respond to the scene with their medical equipment and go to scenes. Well, one of the things that I remember the most out of all the other things, okay, again, it's not, if you're in this career, it's not one thing. It's the everyday stuff that happens that starts to accumulate for you. We got a call for a baby not breathing, and these are not the actual pictures. This is just for effect. We got a call for a baby not breathing. As I walked into the house, I saw my sergeant, who was a very experienced EMT, on the ground in the living room, giving CPR to a 3-month-old baby. We continued to do CPR as much as we can. When the paramedics and the EMTs got there, for some reason, I wound up in the ambulance with the paramedic while somebody else drove the ambulance. I gave ventilation to this 3-month-old baby while the paramedic worked on the baby all the way to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, they had called ahead. So the pediatric trauma team was ready to go when we got there, and they met us at the door. And they brought the baby into the room and put this tiny little baby on this huge stretcher. The contrast between the size of the baby and the stretcher was enormous. Not only that, but the pediatrician on duty in the emergency room was pregnant herself, and very pregnant. They worked on the baby for a while. They had to call it. The doctor lost it. And again, not knowing what all this stuff is in the very beginning, I can understand her pain. And I just went out and sat in the back of the ambulance. Wasn't quite sure what was going on with me. Because again, back then, we didn't have stuff like we have now. We had critical incident debrief teams that would come and talk to you about stuff. But this is one of those things that happened almost 30 years ago that I can picture in my head like it happened yesterday. So on April 17th, 1994, I was lucky enough, I waited 6.5 years to get on the New York City Fire Department. That was my lifelong dream. The only thing I ever wanted to do in my life was be a New York City firefighter. And in April of '94, I was sworn in. And this is another thing where, you know, you go on the internet and you see all these things, and it's really cool, the stuff about being a firefighter and the way guys put all these memes up and everything. But this is true, right? Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the guy that just wears the T-shirt, right? Live the job, okay? Be in the job, don't be on the job, right? It takes more for you to do this job. So now listen here, kid, you just got the lottery. You have the greatest job in the world. The kids look up to you. The elderly see you as good old days, and grown men call you on their worst day. You're what's good in man, service. This job owes you nothing. And as a matter of fact, as though you owe it, live as though you owe it everything. You have been given automatic trust by our citizens because all of those who came before you. Don't blow it. Get in there and make a difference. Leave it better than you found it and do your job. I talk a lot about your job and your job, okay? We have, is that a job? We gotta go? We gotta run? I wish I could still get on the rig. You try to explain to recruits, for those of us who have been in the fire service, you try to explain to a recruit what that means as soon as somebody finds out that you're a firefighter. Okay? You automatically become the electrician, the plumber, the handyman. Once your neighbor finds out you're a firefighter, they come to you to fix everything. So it's your job to know how to do everything. All right? So there you go, guys. Pull up boots. I just put that in there to show you how old I am. Right? I'm pretty old. All right, so this is my recruit class. This is half of my recruit class. This was my company. My squad was the first 2 rows. Again, that handsome devil right there. See, my hands are still shaking still. Get it over here, right about there. Had a lot more hair back then. But the reason why I show one of this picture, this is from 1994, is it how the job has changed over the years, okay? This guy right here, right there, and right there, that's John Burnside, okay? John Burnside was killed on September 11th. He was in ladder 20 down in Soho. This guy right here is Joe Angelini Jr. Okay, Joe Angelini Jr. right there. Joe Angelini Jr. was killed on September 11th in ladder 4, along with his dad, Joe Angelini Sr., who was in Rescue 1, who was probably one of the most senior members on the fire department at that time. And this guy up here, right back there, that guy right there, that's Marty Hurley. A couple years ago, Marty Hurley killed himself. His wife found him in the shed in the backyard of his house. He had shot himself with a shotgun. That's Marty. So there's going to be a couple of photos in here just to show you what a great fireman I was. You know, how young I was. So I swore pull-up boots, but that was old me when I had hair. So after I graduated recruit school, I got assigned to Engine 63 in the North Bronx. And I worked there from 1994 to 1996. And again, it's the everyday calls that you go on that add up. You might never remember the call that you went on, but it's something that's going to stick in your head. It's going to fill your box. We're going to talk about emptying the box later. So in 1996, I was lucky enough to get to Squad 41. Squad 41 was part of the Special Operations Command. They went to all working fires in the South Bronx and Harlem. They did hazmat and all types of technical rescue. The squads, they were a rescue pumper. We were all trained to the same level as all the rescue companies in New York City. There was 5 rescues, at the time, and there were 2 squad companies when I got to 41 in 1996. Squad 1 and Squad 41. In 1998, they added a couple more squad companies, another 5, so it was a total of 5 squad companies. So we all know what happened this day, September 11, 2001. I was home, okay? It was Tuesday, and if it was Sunday or Wednesday, I might not be here standing talking in front of you, but it was Tuesday. So we had moved into a house shortly before. I was renovating the house, and I promised my wife that we wouldn't get TV until I finished the kitchen. So she called me from work and said, a plane just hit the World Trade Center, okay? A couple months previous, I had been down to Fairfax, Virginia to do structural search specialist for the FEMA team, for our USAR team in New York City. Like, okay, let me start getting my stuff together. I gotta have to be going down there doing some searches and stuff. So I got in the shower, and my wife called me back again, and she said a second plane hit. And we all know what we're thinking at that point. So again, not having a TV, I ran next door to my neighbor's house, Gloria, who made the best empanadas in the world. Where are you? Where are you, my man? They were very good. Gloria's TV was on, but Gloria didn't speak English. So Gloria had on the Spanish channel, all I saw was this big hole in the side of the building. And as Gloria was coming into her house to ask me if I wanted a cup of coffee, I was knocking her down going out the door, trying to get out of there. Stevie, he come in, and boom, he's gone. Oh, no. Didn't know what I was going to do, but I just started. I called one of the guys in my firehouse, said, you're going down. I didn't realize that there was a recall yet. I said, I'm on my way down. He said, we're all on our way in. And he said, which way are you coming down? I said, I'm going to go down, come down the thruway and go over to GW's. GW's closed. George Washington Bridge is closed. You can't get there. So I had to drive over the bridge 65 miles north. I lived in New York. It was 65 miles north of the city. And I drove down on the New York side of the Hudson River. I got to about 3 or 4 miles from my actual firehouse, and traffic had stopped dead. So I had to turn around. I went up the ramp, the entrance ramp the wrong way, through the side streets, finally got to my firehouse. When I got there, the truck wasn't there. I'd assumed that they had been there, but we had all just started coming in because of the recall, and we started getting our gear together. That's the last video of those guys. Okay? That's the last video. Okay, we all know what happened next. Because I didn't have a TV, and also for other reasons, I didn't have a radio in my car, so I couldn't listen to the news that was going on. When I got to the firehouse, I had no idea that both of the buildings had collapsed. I had no concept of that whatsoever. I think that helped me a lot, because I wasn't able to hear all the news that was going on. When I got there, we all got together, we got on, we called it the bread truck for our hazmat equipment, and about 15 of us got in a bread truck and we started heading down there. And I was driving the bread truck, and I remember looking south and seeing this big cloud of smoke. I remember the buildings, they should be sticking up a lot higher, having no concept whatsoever that both of those buildings had collapsed. So we all know what happened. South Tower collapsed. North Tower collapsed. Out of the 13, I'm sorry, out of the 5 rescue companies in New York City, every rescue company lost at least, or more than, everybody working that day. What happened on September 11th was that it was the change of tours for the day tour. It was just before 9 o'clock. And when guys saw what was going on, the personality we have, everybody wants to go to the big one, not realizing that this would be the biggest one ever. So every rescue company lost. Rescue 1 lost 11. They were the closest. Actually, Squad 18 was probably the closest to the Trade Center. Rescue 2 lost 7, which is in Brooklyn. Rescue 3 lost 7, which is in the Bronx. Rescue 4 lost 7, which is in Queens. And Rescue 5 lost 10, which is in Staten Island. So think about how far they had to go to get to the Trade Center to be involved in this. Squad 1 was in Brooklyn. They lost 11. Squad 18 was in Lower Manhattan. They lost 7. My company, Squad 41, lost everybody working that day, all 6 guys. Squad 252 lost 5, and the reason that's number 5 is because if you see over at SOC, it says 10. The officer working in Squad 252 that day was not assigned to the company. He was detailed there. So they lost the 6 guys on the fire truck. Squad 288 lost 6 guys that were on the truck. And Hazmat 1 lost 7. There's 1 guy that survived in the Hazmat unit. He was the resource guy. He's the guy who's supposed to sit in the truck and look at the computer and the books and figure out everything that's going on with all these chemicals and stuff. He was the only guy to survive. And then SOC in total, chiefs, lieutenants, captains, battalion chiefs, deputy chiefs, as a total 10. So 11 out of the 13 Special Operations Company lost at least everybody working that day. And I knew a lot of the guys. I counted it once, it was about 80. And I'm not talking about like just, hey, I know that guy. You know, I went to recruit school with that guy. I've worked with that guy in TDYs. I've been to that guy's house. So these are my guys. These are the 6 guys from September 11th that died on my firehouse. So, I'm going to reference my buddy back there. You right, Ben? This is a T-shirt that my good friend there had made up when we did a fundraiser. Did a fundraiser to raise some funds for our families, and I'll talk about that later, why we needed to raise funds for our families. But that's still a T-shirt that the company uses today as their memorial shirt. So Lieutenant Mike Healy. Mike was in some of the busiest companies in the city throughout his career. He was in Ladder 175 in Brooklyn as a firefighter, transferred to Rescue 3, spent some time in Rescue 3, and then got promoted and wound up in Squad 141. I got TDY to, we called it detailed. I'll use the terms that you guys use down here. I get detailed to Rescue 3 for a day, and Mike was cooking lunch. And you think Mike Healy, Irish guy, wouldn't know how to cook, but he made one of the best pasta dishes I've ever had in my entire life. I pirated it, as we call it, and I called it Pasta Healy. After Mike. So Mike had 3 older kids. He was married, had 3 older kids. Bobby Hamilton. We called Bobby the Wolf. When Bobby, off duty, when Bobby had a little too many in him, that beautiful hair that Bob has, it would go up and he would look like a wolf. So we called Bob the Wolf. He's a character. He was one of the senior guys when I got there. And he had this thing. He always said, you know what you're doing? You know what you're doing? Yeah, Bob, you know what we're doing. And he smoked. But he smoked like he was hiding it from his dad. It was the weirdest thing. He'd lean over on the island in the kitchen. And it would be down here so you couldn't see it. That's when we could smoke in the firehouse. But it was like, he was like hiding it from his dad. Bobby had a wife and 2 young kids. I don't remember their ages at the time when this happened. They're grown. They're grown now. But a quick story about Bobby, and I'll tell you, it has to do with the next slide. We had 24 partners. We worked 24 hours, and you would work with another guy who worked the other part of the 24. Bobby's 24 partner was Bruce Van Nosdale. Bruce Van Nosdale was supposed to retire September 29th of 2001. And I'd say that he was supposed to because he wound up staying. Bruce did not die that day. But Bruce and Bobby would always get together and say, what part do you want to work? What part? And Bruce had to meet the guy who he was getting a job when he's retiring. He had to meet the guy to go see, to talk about him about some of the things that was going to happen when he transferred into civilian life. So, hey, Bobby, listen, can I do Monday night, Tuesday? Can I do the first half? I got to go see this guy. Bobby says, little Bobby's got baseball. You know, I really need to do the other half. So Bobby winds up working Monday night, Tuesday, and then Bruce winds up working Tuesday night, Wednesday. Just whatever day it is that you worked. So the short guy on the right with the really cool fireman mustache, that's Bruce Van Nosdale. That's the guy I just told you about. Okay? he changes, he called the guy up who he was supposed to meet, and the guy who he was supposed to meet was also another firefighter, so he changed his 24, and he worked Monday night, Tuesday also. His name was Matt Barnes. He was from 25 Truck. He was killed that day too. Tommy Cullen. We called him the Golden Boy. Tommy Cullen was so into the fire department, it was amazing. Tommy was like a bad quarterback for the football team. When Tommy first got there, we called him the Golden Boy because he could do nothing wrong. He was, we had a lieutenant that had worked with him in a previous firehouse in Brooklyn, very busiest engine in probably in the world, engine 290 in Brooklyn. He just called it 90, came from 90. So Tommy came to 41 with the help of this lieutenant that was now working in 41, and again, he could do no wrong. So a bunch of us, Tommy Cullen was on the football team, Joe Bocha, which is another guy I worked with on the football team. This is how weird this all ties into this, because Joe wound up killing himself a couple of years ago also. So there was also Tommy Foley. Tommy Foley was one of the toughest firemen I've ever met. Tommy transferred to Rescue 3 and wound up being in Rescue 3 on September 11th, and he was killed. But Tommy, and Joe were all playing for the football team. So we did a firehouse trip out to St. John's University. So we were going to go watch all these guys and support guys on the football team. Well, it was the big game. It was the police versus the firemen. It was a rival every year. That and the police-fire hockey game, which is always better than the football game. A lot more fights in a hockey game. But we went to support the guys. And we were losing. And we weren't losing by much. We were losing by less than a touchdown. And there was about a minute and a half left. And all 15 of us up in the stands, we might have had some adult beverages in us. And so we started chanting, "We want the golden boy, we want the golden," and it got louder and louder, and nobody else knew who it was, but we had about 50 to 100 people chanting, "We want the golden boy." But nobody knew on the team who the golden boy was. Anyway, they wound up putting Tommy in, right, as a quarterback. Tommy's first play from scrimmage. Hey, rolls out right, touchdown pass. Fire department goes ahead, we win the game. That's why we called him the Golden Boy. All right. By the way, the guy who he replaced in the game, Pat Lyons from Squad 252, was also killed that day. So Bruce Van Hine. Oh, Bruce. Bruce was at my house about 3 weeks previous cutting my trees down. Bruce was a very spiritual guy, a very naturalistic guy. He used to walk the Appalachian Trail all the time, and he would leave little Bibles in the little huts. Bruce lived in a kind of rural area, and he always would make a joke all the time that we took turns cooking the meals. And when we took turns cooking, one guy would bring the meal in from home. And, hey, Bruce, what are we having tonight? Oh, you're going to love it. What is it? Don't worry about it. You're going to love it. Okay, what is it? Possum stew. Possum stew. Yeah. I was driving down 17 on the way in here, and there he was. I ran him over, scooped him up, brought him into the firehouse, stopped at the supermarket, got some potatoes, got some carrots. We're good, Steve. I love it. Okay, Bruce. He was only kidding. Mikey Lyons. I went to recruit school with Mike Lyons. We called him Bro. We called him Bro because he called everybody in the fire department Bro, to the detriment of himself. Okay, if you've ever heard me talk about that lieutenant that I have that didn't speak to me for 5 years until he slapped me on the back one day, good job, and that's probably the only 2 words I got out of him in 5 years, but one of the most proudest moments of my career. He called up when he got the paperwork to get detailed to Squad 41. Hey, bro, can I talk to the boss? Yeah, sure. So they ring the bell for Lieutenant King. Lieutenant King was tough, man. He He was another salty guy. I learned so much from that guy, but he didn't say 2 words to me for 5 years. But I just watched and learned. Squad 4-1, Lieutenant King. Hey, bro. Bro! So Lieutenant King wasn't very happy when he finally met Mike, and he came to the firehouse to see what was going on. Mike was married. I'm sorry, I missed that part with Bruce. And Bruce had 2 girls. Tommy Cullen had a young boy, probably 4 or 5 years old. Bless you. Michael Lyons had a young girl, and his wife was pregnant. Mary Michael Lyons was born in November of 2001. She never got to meet her dad. Mike and I went to Crowley School again too. He worked in a Midtown engine company that it was okay. You know, it wasn't a salty ghetto company like I worked in. So I just got to go back for a second to tell you the story. All right, because here's Mike right here. All right, there's Mike right there. You see his helmet? Okay. So Mike brought his gear to get ready for his first tour in the firehouse, and he saw my helmet. And he went out of his way to clean my helmet for me because he wasn't happy about how salty my helmet looked being where I was and him being where he came from. So when we took pictures of everybody for the firehouse, Mike decided that he was going to wear the senior man's helmet in that picture because he wanted to look like a South Bronx fireman. So I would bust his chops, he would bust my chops all the time. Mike was a good guy. And Greg Sikorsky. Greg was one of the newest guys in the firehouse. He could fix anything. He had his own mechanic shop with his brother and his dad, very mechanically inclined. He was married and had a young boy, Stephen, who was about 4 years old. Excuse me. When he came to the firehouse on his interview, because in order to get into a special operations company, you had to get interviewed by the captain, go through the process. You went on a trial period, and then if the guys liked you, you got to stay. It wasn't the captain's decision, it was the men's decision, the way a firehouse should be. I hear some giggles. So the captain asked, hey, Greg, you related to the helicopter family? Absolutely, Cap. Hey, can you get no problem, Cap, whatever you need. He was just kissing up to him. He wanted to get into the company. He wasn't related to the Sikorskis. So this here is, we called it a BF4, right? As an officer, we wrote down our riding positions. Everybody had a riding position for the day. The officer had one on paper in his pocket. There was also one on the apparatus that was on a dashboard sitting in front of the officer. But in the firehouse, we had one in the firehouse, and it gave you your tool assignment and what you're responsible for. This is the board from September 11th, the 9x tour to date with the names of all the guys on it. It is now covered with plexiglass. It has never been touched since that day. As a memory to our guys. At some point, we wound up putting everybody's names on the side of the truck, which a lot of the fire departments do, a lot of the companies do. And then we had a guy who was a phenomenal carpenter who wound up rebuilding our house watch. In New York, the house watch is where you receive the alarms. So that little box there, that's where the computer was stored and had a printer on top. And the printer would come up and give you your run. We called it the ticket, give all the information. So Louis ripped down the old house watch, measured this entire thing, and built it in his house without ever going back there until it was done. And he brought it in pieces and put it together perfectly. It's one of the most beautiful house watches I've seen as a memorial. Anybody that dies in the line of duty gets a plaque from the department, which is the bottom part. And up top are some oil drawings of one of our lieutenants, Charlie Schmidt. His sister, who was an artist, drew some portraits of our guys to put above it. So we all know what happened that day. A lot of things went on. I'll talk about it. The one thing I wanted to point out about this picture is, is the bottom photo right there. See the guy with the helmet with no front piece? Right here? Okay. The reason why that happened was because at that time during recruit school, you would do, I'm trying to think, however long time you would go to the Rock, which was our academy, and you would do a couple weeks there. And then after that, you would go out to a company for 7 weeks to do some training in the company, and then you would come back to the Rock after that. Okay. Well, the first day that these probies left the Rock was September 10th. So this guy right here is on his second day in the fire service, and this is what he has to deal with. I don't know who that is. I just wanted to point that out. The significance of him not having a front piece and him having his name on the front. So this is what we did on duty every day. Every day we went down there. I was amazed at 2 110-story buildings fell in such a small area. They literally pancaked down on one another. Everybody's seen the pictures. Go down there and see how small the area was. The names for ground zero, whatever it was you would call it, I hated all those terms. It was the pile at first because it was a big pile of metal. And then once we started to dig everything out, when we got below grade, it became the pit. So days and days went on. I mean, these beams right here, that's the outside of the building, the outside shell of the building. This right here is the Marriott Hotel. Okay, the Marriott Hotel was damaged one half of the building when the tower came down, and then the other, about 3/4 of the other half was damaged after that. 2 guys from my firehouse that had been promoted previously were in the lobby of the hotel, and they were buried, completely buried. They had to dig themselves out. I make a joke, one of the guys, my leather helmet in my office survived the trade center because one of those guys was wearing my helmet that day. So it was good luck because those 2 guys survived. They were able to dig themselves out and survive. But this is probably the next day because it's light out. It might be that day because there's a lot of people there. The people just flooded in everywhere, wanting to help. I remember one of the days during the week, we were standing at our cache for our USAR team, and about 100 Chicago firefighters walked in. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I hugged every one of them. What happened that day on September 11th when we went down there, again, everybody went down to the trade center, and we had to find each other. We were trying to find out guys who were guys who would come in off duty. We were trying to find where our rig was. We were trying to find out where our guys might have been. We found out that they were in the lobby of the South Tower, the one that fell first. At some point during the day, we had got everybody together. We had gotten together as a company, and then we had gotten together as a special operations division, and one of the chiefs from SOC told us that everybody's gone. And what does that mean? What do you mean everybody's gone? Everybody's gone. We don't know how many, but everybody's gone. We need you to put a list together of who you've seen and who you haven't seen. And we're going to go by that list. So once we got all that stuff together, the captain got us all together and said, listen, the guys that are supposed to work Tuesday night, I want you guys to stay here. I want everybody else to go back to the firehouse. And then tomorrow, we're going to split you into, we're going to work 24 on, 24 off. So whoever here now is going to have tomorrow off. Who's supposed to work today, whoever's supposed to work tomorrow, you go to the firehouse, you stay there, and you come back tomorrow. So it's just this, we were walking around, this devastation. I mean, you know, again, this is part of the outside of the building that's stuck into the ground. I tried to remember to bring it with me today. In 9 months of digging through that pile, I found one piece of glass. One piece of glass is about that thick. I wish I would have brought it with me. But things were just crushed. And we would find people, firefighters, civilians, it was the same way. Over here, we would find people completely intact. And 2 feet over this way and 3 feet down, we would find nothing but the metal buttons and snaps from coats from the equipment. I don't know what rescue truck this is. This is one of the walkways that went across from the Trade Center into the World Financial Center. The walkway collapsed and fell on top of the fire truck. But again, this is what we're dealing with that day. Every fire truck, every engine company, every ladder company was almost completely stripped of every piece of equipment that was there just because we were trying. The buildings had collapsed, there were other buildings on fire, but it knocked down the water supply to all the other buildings. World Trade Center 4, 5, and 6 started to burn, and 3 of those buildings completely burned because nobody was able to put those buildings out. And I don't know if you know the story of 7 World Trade Center. That was on fire when we got there, and later on that day, that building completely collapsed too. That was like a 30 or 40-story building. So this is a look north on West Street. West Street was on the west side of the Trade Center. To your left, as if you're looking at that picture, would have been Hudson River. So that's facing north. The ramp that those guys are on is to the underground parking garage of the Trade Center. And one of the reasons why I did this picture is because I want you, if you can see it clearly, I want you to look in the background and see how blue that sky is. Right? This sky has never been as blue as it was since that day. It was an amazingly beautiful blue sky day. But if you turned around the other way, you couldn't see about 20 feet in front of you because of all the dust. So I just wanted to point that out in that picture and what a beautiful day it was. So, this is the hotel that I told you about. This was a 30-story hotel. So the south tower collapsed on it first, took about half of it out, and then the rest of the north tower fell and took the rest of it out. Obviously, this is a nighttime picture. I'm not sure what day it is. So, Tuesday night, we all go back to the firehouse, whoever's working. I don't know what time we got back there. We woke up the next morning, and we decided that the guys that were there today, we're going to split them up. Half the guys are going to go down and work for half the day, and the other half of the guys are going to stay at the firehouse and try and get things in order. Everybody's calling the firehouse, asking if we know where everybody is. We don't know where anybody is. So a real good friend of mine, Richie Ting, he's since retired. I knew where our rig was. So Richie and I went down with the guys that were going to work on the pile during the day. Richie and I were going to work that night. So we drove down, we found our truck, and it was completely covered in dust. We had to drive over the Brooklyn Bridge to another firehouse with our heads out the windows because there was so much dust swirling around inside the truck. It was really hard to see. So Richie and I cleaned off the fire truck. We brought it back to the firehouse, and we started getting everything. We started cleaning up our tools, trying to get everything together so we can go back in service as much as we could. Every special operations company in the city right now, except for 2, has been killed. So September 12th, Wednesday, while we're doing all this stuff, we're listening to the dispatcher on the radio. This is 90 West Street. 90 West Street was a little south of the Trade Center. And it looked just like this. It had all this scaffolding and netting around it on September 11th. So as we were trying to get things ready on September 12th, we hear the dispatcher calling a command post. We're on the phone with two people. They're stuck in an elevator at 90 West Street. Could you send somebody there? Okay. Half an hour, 40 minutes later, Manhattan to the command post. We're on the phone with those people in the elevator. They're stuck in the elevator. They can't get out. They're in 90 West Street. Okay? And we kept hearing this over and over again. And I say this because this quote, adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. Because I'm going to talk about some stuff that happened right that day. So on 90 West Street, it was September 12th. And listening to what was going on, I was scared. Yeah, sure I was. We were all scared. But we still had to do our job. And if you can't do your job, can you leave yourself if you can't? And here's the story. Oh, Chris, you might have to help me here. That's 90 West Street. That's what we're watching on TV while we hear the dispatcher calling the command post that there's people stuck in an elevator in that building. We're watching that building on TV burn. So later on in the day, the guys that were worked during the day came back and we relieved them and we were driving down. And it was Charlie Schmidt, my lieutenant, myself, Richie Ting, Bob Trevigno, and Owen McGovern. Owen McGovern was in Squad 41 for 3 weeks when this happened. So he was brand new to the company. But we got in our truck and we drove down there and we had a Halligan, a pry bar, and a shovel. Those are the tools that we had when we went down there. So we reported into the command post, and the command post, my officer reports in and he says, Charlie, do me a favor, go down and see Chief Spadafora down at 90 West Street. I'm going to 90 West Street. I just watched that building burn all day and listened to the radio transmissions of that and watched this happen. So we go see Chief Spadafora, who it all ties in, maybe about 2 months ago, passed away from 9/11 cancer. Chief Spadafora knew my lieutenant. Hey, Charlie, do me a favor. He goes, they're telling me that there's people stuck in an elevator. I sent 3 companies in, and they can't find them. Okay, Chief. So we walk in to the lobby, and in the lobby, there's 6 banks. There's 6 elevator cars. 4 of them are down at the lobby floor, and 2 of them you can see into the shaft. So the guys are milling around, 3 companies, however many guys, 20, 30 guys there, milling around in the lobby. I don't even want to walk into this building. I've just been watching. 210-story buildings just fell, and I'm watching this one burn all day long. And I have to walk into this building now to go and try and find, I am scared, poopyless. But I was with some good people. So we go into the lobby, and my boss says to one of their bosses, you know, what's going on? They told us there's people in the elevator here, but these cars are good. And this one down here is underneath the water. So that one's sunk down there. And one of my guys went over and said, that's not the top of the car, that's the bottom of the shaft. And he turned his flashlight up, and the bottom of the car was 4 stories up. So Charlie goes, all right, come on, guys, let's go. So again, you know, probably as much as I'm shaking right now, I'm walking into this building to go try and find this elevator that's on the 4th floor. So we get up to the 4th floor, and the fire's been out by then, and there had been some renovation to the floor where the elevators to the 4th floor, and we found some ornamental ironwork over some sheetrock, and that's where the elevator cars were. The actual elevators didn't stop on the 4th floor when they renovated that building. So we took out our Halligan, our crowbar, and our shovel, and got to work. And we took out as much as we could until we got to the elevator doors. And we opened up the elevator doors, and there were 2 people in the elevator car. We listened to them on the radio all day tell the dispatcher that they were in there. Come and get us. And I go back to the slide before. Diversity doesn't build character. It reveals it. Learned a lot of things about a lot of people after September 11th, about what they were personally and physically capable of. There were 3 companies in the lobby that didn't have whatever it was to go up there and look for those guys. Did I want to go up there and look? No. But that was our job. So we found the 2. My lieutenant, Charlie, calls down to Chief Spatafor. Chief, we got 2 1045s cold in the elevator. He's like, are you kidding me? Charlie says, no, we got two here. So Chief Spatafor says, Charlie, what do you need? And excuse my language, but I told you this is... Charlie, who was a very, very religious man, got on the radio and said, Chief, I need you to send those fucking cowards down in the lobby up here to bring these people out, because we found them. So the other guys came up. They took them out. We took a break. We went outside. We were sitting on, we were taking a break, and Owen, who has been for three weeks, turned to me and said, is that what we do here? Yes, that's what we do here. So as the time went along, the weeks, the months, tell this story because all the USAR teams for all throughout the United States had come in to try and help. And I just showed this slide to remind me of California Task Force 8. Because at one point, very early on, we ran into a couple of guys from California. And we all make fun of the East Coast, West Coast things, but these guys had on some really sharp-looking uniforms. They had their bright yellow stuff on and their boots shined and everything, and we looked like a bunch of hobos. So they had this tool that they wanted to try out. So they said to us, hey guys, there were 2 of them. Hey guys, do you mind if we jump in with you? They're giving us a hard time about getting into the site to help. We want to try. Yeah, no problem, guys. Come on with us. So one guy takes out the magic marker, starts writing his social security number on his arm, writes his social security number down on his leg, hand it off to the next guy, hand off to the next guy. There were 5 of us or so. Excuse me. And we gave it to the guys from California. They're like, what's that? In case something happens to us, they're able to identify us by our social security number that we have marked on our bodies now. That's kind of morbid, but that's what it was. I can't believe nobody died down there during the recovery. So they were a little reluctant, but they did it. So they followed us, and we started going into some hairy places. We were walking across one of these beams that, when you look down into it, it looked like hell. Literally, look, the fire's down below. And this is when it was still a pile. It was still, 100 feet high. And we got to one spot, and we were walking across this beam, and my buddy Gibby slowed down in front of me. I'm like, Gibby, don't slow down. It's hot here. He's like, dude, my shoes are melting. And it was so hot on that beam that the soles of his boots were starting to melt on the beam. So for whatever happened, we turned to one of the guys from California because we needed the tool to go do something. Hey, Cali guys. Where'd the Cali guys go? They were gone. They were gone. Again, I didn't want to be there. They didn't have to be there. I had to go find my brothers. I had to find my friends. So I just tell that story about the California guys. And while all this was going on, we started having services like right away. Because what they decided was if they had found your body, they would give you a funeral. Okay? If they hadn't found your body, they would do a memorial service until they did. So at some point we started doing serving services, and on our days off, this is all we would do. There were so many funerals going on around New York City and around the area that the newspapers would put them in, the local newspapers would put them in and put them on the news channels to ask civilians to go to the funerals because there were so many that some of them didn't even have any firemen showing up except for the guys whose company that was lost because there were so many funerals going on at the same time. The guys from the pipe band, and there's a book and a movie out about them, were amazing. They went to every single one. They went to 5, 10 in a day sometimes. They would just go from one to the other. I can't imagine how much of an emotional toll that took on those guys. So as a company, we did this 9 times. Okay, we had 6 memorials and we had 3 funerals. We were only able to find Bobby Hamilton, Greg Sikorsky, and Bruce Van Hine. We weren't able to find Mike Healy, Mike Lyons, and Tommy Cullen. We only found 3. But we did our memorials, and then the funerals came later on. But again, this is what we were doing. They were nice enough. Guys would work for you to have the day off to do a service if it was a guy from your company. So all this, everything going on, it's starting to take a toll on us inside the firehouse and everything. I called this the gawking platform. Okay, there were a couple of these situated around outside the site. And they were platforms that they built, and yeah, it's really cool. People wrote messages and stuff on that. But sometimes you would get people up there, and it was like a photo shoot for them. You know? And we're down in this pile looking for our friends, to bring our friends home, and we are filthy, and we stink, and we have body parts on us. And we come up, and there's a group of kids up there like doing before selfies. We didn't have... Okay, guys, this was 2001, all these young kids that weren't smartphones yet. All right, that's how long ago this was. But people were taking pictures, and one of my guys lost it. He went up on the platform and he ripped these people apart. And it wasn't any fault of theirs. It was just that we were tired, and we had a lot going on, and we were trying to do a lot of things, and it was taking a toll on us. Because what happened was we felt forgotten. Okay, who's ever been to New York City? Okay. All right, so when you say, it's great when you, oh, you're from New York? What part of the city are you from? I'm not from anywhere near New York City. I live 65 miles north, but when you tell people that you're from New York, they think you're from this little spot right here. Right there, that's the center of the universe in Manhattan. Times Square, Central Park's right up here, maybe downtown a little bit. But if you don't know New York City, there's 5 boroughs in New York City. Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Staten Island, okay? And that little part right there, where everybody thinks you're going to, is getting all the attention. We didn't have any union support for 3 months. We didn't have any CSU counseling union support for 3 months. We were taking care of ourselves, okay? My firehouse was right about there. Right about there in the South Bronx, okay? Manhattan lost a lot of companies, okay? The Bronx lost 2. Squad 41, my company, and Rescue 3. Queens, the borough of Queens, lost 3 companies. Rescue 4, Squad 288, and Hazmat Company 1. Okay. Staten Island lost 1 company, Rescue 5. And because of the location of this part of Brooklyn, Brooklyn lost a fair amount of companies right in this area that just went in over the bridges into the lower part of Manhattan. Okay, but that's the center of the universe right there. Everybody was going there. Nobody was coming to 150th Street in the South Bronx to see if we were okay, except the people from the neighborhood. I heard a story, one of the firefighters, again, you know, and I don't know how, no fault to these guys, I don't know how they do it sometimes. The firehouses in that part of the city, when firefighters go and visit, or just civilians, they overwhelm these guys with wanting to see stuff, and especially right after that time. So I heard a story about a guy who walked into one of the firehouses in Midtown and handed them a $500,000 check. And he said, "This is for you." And the guy said, "Well, we can't take this. You know, this is too much money. You have to give this to the big fund," which they made a big fund through the union and through. They already got their money. This one's for you guys. You know what we got on 150th Street in the South Bronx? A couple trays of rice and beans. Because that's the only thing that the people in those neighborhoods can afford to give us. So we were a little on edge with that stuff. You know, we were hurting, we were in pain, and I just put these things on air because these are things that triggered me as things went on. Went to a funeral one day and decided, okay, Blockbuster Video is a store. They used to have videos and DVDs. You actually bought it off the shelf. You rented it off the shelf and then put it in your machine. It's called a DVD player or a VCR. I know a couple of you might understand what that is. But after one of the funerals one day, still in uniform, went and grabbed a pizza, went and grabbed the video, and the lady didn't charge me for the video. And I said, what's this for? And she goes, "Oh, it's because of who you are." Like, who am I? I lost my shit in front of Helene in the store. Because she's given me something, whether it was a $4 video, she's given me something because my 6 brothers died. Who am I? I didn't do anything to deserve that. Even just $4. There's just the emotions that were moving through all these times. Steven Sikorsky was the 4-year-old son of Greg Sikorsky. I went to go visit Marie and Steven one time. So I went over to the house. I'm hanging out with Steven for a couple hours. And Steven wouldn't let me leave. Because he didn't want another man to not come back into his house. Christmas Eve, 2001. I got this close to a fist fight with my best friend in the firehouse. Because he was working a day and a night tour, and I wanted to go home to be with my wife, because I was only working a day tour. It's a long story, but we had a huge argument, but that's what it was. The pain and the hurt that was going on through all that time. And then the sensory flashbacks. I could get a smell in my nose that brings me back to that pile. Just something that triggers me like that. So not only was all this stuff going on in the firehouse, but I'm going to get a little political here for a minute. I'm not a very good fan of who the mayor was at that time. I think he was a very good mayor for the city. I didn't think that he was very good for us. What happened was he had lost the election, and he had wanted the site to be cleaned up by the time he was out of office so he could take credit for it. That's my own personal opinion. That's what I think happened. But what he did was he took all of the firefighters, except for a handful, off of the pile. Because what we were doing was we had details. And you would go down there for 3 weeks, I think it was, because they wouldn't even give you a month. They came out with this scientific study that said if you do this for longer than this amount of time, it's going to affect you more. So we're only going to do it for 16 days. And what they would do was the grapplers would take stuff from the big pile and put it into a smaller pile. And that grappler would take it and put it into a small pile. And that grappler would take it and put it into a small pile. And by the time I got over here, where there were 30 firemen with rakes, going through the debris, looking for bone fragments. That's what we were looking for to try and identify these people. Tiny little things like this. So it was a very emotional thing for those guys to do that. The sock company guys did not have to do that because one company had to be at the site 24 hours a day. So they did 8-hour rotations. So we didn't have to go. I would have never been able to do that. I would have never been able to stand there with a rake and try and look for people. We were down there for when we would find people in the really bad spots that were because we had the special tools that we would try and get them out. So Mayor Giuliani, oops, sorry. So I was going to say, can you cut that out from the video? Well, here, it's right here. He decided that he was going to limit the number of firefighters down there, and there was an uproar. They went down to the site. The police officers had it blocked off, blockades, and the firefighters stormed the gates. And there were some fights. Now, the cops didn't want to do it. It was a mess, all right? This just goes back to all the pain and hurt that's going on through all this time, that we're fighting with cops. So they arrested a bunch of cops, and they videotaped a bunch more. And if you didn't get arrested there, what they did was they looked at the video, and they found out who you were, and then they went to your house and they arrested you in front of your family. Well, imagine how that felt for some of the guys. So as we're digging, this is where the South Tower was, all right? Squad 41 right here. You can see it there, okay? This is the beam, they call it. It's in the museum. When we started digging below this beam, right when we got to the point where Squad 41 was, this is in the lobby of the South Tower where we thought our guys was, we started to find some of our gear. We started to find tools that had Squad 41 markings. We started to find carabiners that only the special operations guys carried. And what we did was, one of our guys wrote Squad 41 on there so that we would all know that when we changed shifts, that we knew to go over to that spot where that beam was to look for our guys. That little thing right there, Squad 41, you wouldn't believe the uproar that that caused in the fire department, the police department, and the Port Authority. The fire department was getting all the attention. Cops weren't. NYPD lost 23 people. Port Authority police lost 37 people. Some people didn't even know who a Port Authority cop was until September 11th. The tension between the groups was unbelievable. The tension between the companies that lost guys and didn't lose guys was unbelievable. We got calls every night. Who the hell do you think you are marking that? You think you're special? We lost guys too. Yeah, we know we did, right? We're just trying to mark a spot so that we know to go back and to look for our guys. Well, you see what happened eventually is that everybody started putting stuff on it. And this picture is actually on, I'm sorry, that's not March. That's the wrong. It's May 2002, the night before they actually cut this beam down and closed the site and brought it up the ramp. So, but in March of 2002, once we got past where that marked on that beam, we started finding some of our guys. And on March 17th, 2002, we found one of the first signs that it was one of our guys. So we had a phone tree, and if the guys down at the site found something, they would do a phone tree, and everybody would call one another because we wanted to go down there to carry our guys out. This is Greg Sikorsky, okay? The guy in his front is his dad. That's Greg's dad right there, okay? There's about 35 people in that picture. That's 4 o'clock in the morning, okay? And none of those guys are on duty. When we'd be able to find someone, we'd do our phone tree, and everybody would come down to the site, and once we got everybody there, we would line up, and we would carry out our brother. We were able to do that 3 times. We were able to do that for Greg. For Bruce Van Hine, we found his helmet and not much else. And for Bob Hamilton, it's kind of a funny story if you know Bob, the character that he was. They couldn't identify Bobby's body, his DNA, for a while because he had a female's DNA mixed in with his somehow. And we all knew how that happened if you knew Bobby. Hey, come on, honey. In this time of crisis, Bobby is comforting a young female with his coat over her shoulder. But that was Bobby. They wound up cutting this down and they put it in the museum. And there it stands today. I have never been back there. That's 99% truth, and I'll tell you why I haven't been back there in a little bit. Okay? But we were able to get through this together, and whether you're a firefighter or a civilian, you can understand this entire thing. From the outside looking in, you can't understand what it's like. From the inside looking out, I can't even explain it to you. It's just what it is. But after 3 months of nobody from the union showing up, the first time they showed up, they had checks to give to the wives. How you guys doing? You know what? Get out. Give us the checks and get out. We'll take care of our families. And then they assigned us a counselor to the firehouse, Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul saved my life. But like anything else here, and I'll talk about it later, nobody wanted to talk to, Dr. Paul would come in and sit at the kitchen table and would say, nobody would say a word to him. Who's this outsider in our firehouse in this time? What does this guy know about how we're feeling? What am I going to talk to this guy for? But Dr. Paul would just sit and listen and wouldn't say a word. Until when it was time for Dr. Paul to leave, the neighborhood that we worked in was kind of rough. We had a parking lot with a gate on it. Anybody, the time that Dr. Paul came, he'd have to park in the locked gate, and when he would leave, somebody would have to walk him out to unlock the gate with him. And that's where the term parking lot therapy came from. Because the one guy that wouldn't say anything in front of anybody else, or wouldn't talk to Dr. Paul in the kitchen, would go open the gate for him. And there would take a half hour to a 45-minute therapy session with nobody else watching. But it worked. So again, all these times, you know, it goes on and on. In August of 2002, 3 months after we had finished down at the site, things started to get bad for me. And when somebody else, a friend or a firefighter or a family member, tells you that you have to go get help, then it's almost too late. Right? You're the one that has to realize when it is that you need to go and what you need to do about it. And I'll talk about that a lot more. I started going to therapy. They would give you some time off. If you needed more time off after that, you would have to go on medication. So I started medication in August. And the medication, it took for a while. The type of medication takes a while for it to take effect. It also takes a while for it to take the effects off again. So what would happen over these years, these next couple of years, next 2 or 3 years, I would feel better, so I would stop my medication because I felt good. But then when it took 60 days to get off the meds, I would feel horrible again. And this was a cycle for me for a long time, even until 2016 when I came down here. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But every time I came off the medication, it would get worse the next time. My symptoms would get worse. So, you think that's the worst thing that can happen in your career as a firefighter? That you lose 6 guys in a firehouse on one of the biggest tragedies in United States history? Well, again, because on January 23rd, 2005, I was working in Squad 41, and they call it the Black Sunday Fire. All right? I don't like the name. I call it the 178th Street Fire. But there's a lot of things that contributed to this fire. Blizzard condition, froze a hydrant, loss of water. There was a lot of things. When firemen die at fires, it's not one thing. It's a domino. One thing happens, another thing happens, another thing happens. And that day, a lot of the dominoes start to fall. So they called the Black Sunday fire because Kurt Myron and John Ballou died in a fire in the Bronx that I was at, the 178th Street fire. But Rich Sclafani died at a different fire in a different borough on the same day. So 3 firefighters died on January 23rd, 2005 from 2 different fires in the city of New York.
Division 3rd, 1 minute. 4 units, Division 7. Get it, 4-2. Chief, we have... Hey. You got fire into the hallway on the floor above. You need a line upstairs. No water. Mayday. Let it do 7 minutes. You know what? You gotta get a hold of the roof before the shield blows down on everybody. Division 7 to the Mayday message. Yeah, who's the Mayday? The member from 27 truck, he's out of here. So the casket has been lowered to him and there's a member with him. But we need to get a hole in the roof. Go up another. We'll come back in a half inch. Lift your eyes. Hold up on the windows. Hold up on the windows. You got to be on the front fire escape. If it's down 1-7, all units on the roof. Back out to the stairway. Back out to the stairway. It's out the windows on the top floor. 40, how do you make out the line? Runners on the roof. You're going to need to send the rope over the side. Roof team, send the scoop over the side to the 4th side of the building. 1-7 to division. We need the line on the 2.5 smoking and jump the water. Okay, 6-7 to division. Rescue, who's to rescue? Mayday. Go ahead, boys. Good, Mayday, what's your location? Let's do the roof. Get a pail out of here, hurry up. We need radio silence. I need water in that 2.5 inch line. 48 inch water to the 2.5 inch line. Mayday, get a rope to the roof, Get a 35 in the rear, 35 to the rear. Rope on the roof, 35 to the rear. We need a rope on the roof. Top floor, we're losing the top floor, Patty. Division 7, 10-4. Division 7-2, we're going to run 9 finish truck. Roof on the rope. We got guys out the rear window. Okay. Mayday, 5-6. Engine out, Phil. Fireman down in the rear. 2 firemen down in the rear. 2 firemen down in the rear. Let's go. We got 75. Put your pumps in your Mayday, 2 firemen for the top floor in the rear. We need them. What they brought it in the... Oh, man. officers, Kate. 7 to 1-7, how are we making out with that line out? Hey, be advised, 48 just bringing their line up now. I'm going to try to go back upstairs. 10-4. Let's do the iron, where are you? Ladder 5, 6, 7. Urgent, we need the company with oxygen and back boys in the back.
So my recruits understand why I don't like pass alarms in full activation. It's one of those sensory things that brings me back to something that has a lot of pain. Four windows right here are where 6 guys jumped out of. This window right here was Joe DiBernardo. This window here, sorry, the second window, was Jeff Cool. The third window was Lieutenant Myron, Brendan McCauley, and Gene Stolowski. And the window next to the fire escape was John Ballou. Okay? All 6 of those guys jumped out that window into the rear. This is a little deceiving from this picture because it's a 4-story building, but in the rear, there was one more level. So 5 of the guys fell 5 floors, and 1 guy fell 4 floors. Brendan McCauley, who was in this window here, he was a probie. His brother was killed on September 11th. The guy in this window here, Jeff Cool, he had a rope. And what you see about that is the window's still intact. There was an air conditioner in that window, even though it was January 23rd. There was an air conditioner, and Jeff Cool had to climb out of the window over the air conditioner with fire coming out over his head to get out of that window. Jeff had a rope. Jeff called to Joey DiBernardo in the corner window and said, "Joey, I got a rope, but I don't have anything to tie it off to." Joey said to Jeff, "Jeff, throw me the rope. I'll anchor you." So Jeff said no. Joey said, "Jeff, you got kids. Give me the rope." So I don't know how Jeff got Joey the rope, but Joey got the rope and he wrapped it around his arm. And Jeff pendulumed out the window, and he's the one guy that fell 4 floors. He fell on the BC corner. And as of that audio, when you hear the guy yelling about the guys in the window, I was running down the Bravo side of the building watching that lieutenant give those transmissions. He was in my line of sight at the Bravo Charlie corner. And I got about 10 from the Bravo Charlie corner, and something fell out of the sky and landed in front of me. It was a piece of furniture. And I said, "That's odd. They're overhauling now," until I got closer and I saw it was Jeff Cool. So I went over to Jeff Cool and I grabbed Jeff by the shoulder straps because I just wanted to drag him out. There's 18 inches of snow on the ground during this fire. So I grabbed Jeff by the shoulder straps and he let out this horrendous scream like I've never heard and said, "Don't touch me." Now, he's alive because he's talking to me. And that's how I'm doing my triage. He's alive. So I go around the back, and I get to the back, and sensory. The contrast of the black gear and the white snow, I will never forget. The steam coming off of their gear, I will never forget. We went down into the back. Once again, there was a brand new guy in the company, 3 weeks, Jimmy DeShulo. But Jimmy was a paramedic and a damn good one. The first guy I came to was Lieutenant Myron. I'm no doctor, but he looked deceased to me. I looked at Jimmy DeShulo, and Jimmy was at Gene Stolowski's head. And Jimmy, being a good paramedic he was, did a jaw thrust on Gene, and I watched Gene come back to life. Gene started to breathe again. The steam from his breath came out of his mouth. I tried that on Lieutenant Myron, and nothing happened. So we packaged him. I didn't even package him. we were just scooping and running. You know, that adversity, I was running on pure adrenaline at that point. There were guys screaming and yelling. It was a lot going on. But Jimmy DeSciullo was able to have his wits about him, and they packaged Gene Stolowski and brought him to the hospital. Gene Stolowski had an internal decapitation. His spinal cord was severed, not his his column, not his spine. If spinal cord would have been, he would have been paralyzed. But the bony structure of his spinal column was severed. When they got him to the hospital, took his neck brace off, his head turned 90 degrees. But Jimmy saved his life. And when we met Jimmy, when the year anniversary, when Jimmy and Gene finally met, told Gene that Gene says, I remember being in a window looking down, and the next thing I remember is being on my back looking up. And I said, Gene, you were dead, and Jimmy brought you back to life. So what happened at that fire, real quick, is that there was an illegal partition again. It's not one thing that happens at a fire, it's the dominoes. 18 inches of snow, 18 inches of snow on the ground, whatever it was. They had built an illegal partition wall in here that did not allow the guys in these windows to make it to this room, to the fire escape, and that's where they thought that they could get out. So they had to jump. So the guy in the front is Gene Stolowski. The guy in the back is Jeff Kuhl. They both spent a lot of time in the hospital. I went to go visit Jeff in the hospital. Jeff had, his internal injuries were so bad, they had to remove parts of his organs out of his body and put them outside his body till they reduced the swelling and able to be put back in. So he had this sterile tent around him with all of his insides outside of him. And I talk about, not survivor's guilt or anything like that, but I would see these two and they would ask me how I'm doing. Are you kidding? You guys jumped out the windows. Yeah, but you saw us jump out the windows. I can't imagine what that was like. Can you give me a couple minutes? We'll take like a 5-minute break, all right? Yeah. Love you, bud. Thank you. Sir.
Story. Thank you for sharing.
Not even halfway over yet, Bob. All right, am I on again? I'm good? All right. We get started again? I got the high sign there. I had to give you guys a mandatory personal break there because we're about halfway through. So hopefully you bear with me the rest of the day. So again, as bad as September 11th, 2001 was, and then a couple years later, January 23rd, 2005, on August 27th, 2006, I was working a buddy shift in Rescue 3 around the Bronx, and we went to another fire where 2 firefighters died. Lieutenant Howie Carpluck from Engine 42 was working overtime in 75 Engine, and Michael Riley was 6 weeks out of recruit school. It was a 99-cent store, usually known for overcrowding the loads, how much stock is in the store. Numerous fires in this building previously over the years, shoddy repairs. There was a fire in the store.
6 advance unit report to the front of the building. Mayday. 46, I think it's from, Mayday. Tell me when you Mayday, go ahead. Go out! Did you know Mayday?
So what happened was the floor collapsed, kind of into a V-shaped, and it kind of sucked everybody into the collapse. And at the front of the line was Mike Riley, the probie on 75 Engine, and he fell into the hole, and Howie Carpluck, the lieutenant, fell in on top of him. And then 3 or 4 other guys got caught up. I was on the roof of this fire, and we were cutting a hole in the roof. And as I finished doing my cut, I took a step back, and my foot sunk into the tar on the roof. And this goes into that recognition prime decision-making stuff that I remember from all those years of listening to those guys talk at that kitchen table. You know, hey kid, listen, if you ever need to fight a fire is on a top floor fire, look for the bubbling tar, or if there's snow, the melting snow on the roof. So I take a step back because it's August, and my foot sinks into the tar. And I have in that 1 millisecond, I have all these things running through my head. This is not good, not good. No, it's not good. I don't know why. This is not supposed to happen like this. What am I going to do about this? In that split second, everything is going through my head. So I decide that I'm going to turn around to tell the officer from Squad 41, Mickey Conboy, who was, again, I was from Squad 41, but I was working in Rescue 3 that day. He was the boss in Squad 41. I turned around to tell Mickey, and Mickey had his back to me with his thermal camera, looking from the bottom of this shot to the top of the shot. And he turned around and he said, "Everybody off the roof." I'm like, okay. You know, I know this is bad. He knows something that's worse. So we off the roof and got to a safe side of the roof, and that's my footprint right there after I cut the hole. So Mickey not only saved my life, he saved everybody else's life on the roof. Because at some point, that roof collapsed into a fire building. You also see the AC unit there that's got a rope tied off on it. Some of the guys in another part of the fire tied it off with a rope so that it wouldn't fall into the hole.
Battalion 1741. 541, go ahead. Somebody off the roof? Hang on, I can't shoot. Back it off. 17. Right here, guys, hang up to the roof of the exposure. It's going pretty good on the roof of the fire building. All the units are off. We can use a line up there.
So this was a corner store. The entrance was over on the Walton Avenue side. On this side, when the collapse happened, that's this audio.
Got all your guys, they counted 433. This is 75 Mayday.
That's Cowie Car Plant.
Engine 75, go ahead with your Mayday message. Division 6, Engine 75. Division 6, they're calling you on the department radio. Division 6 calling you on the department radio. Division 6, Engine 75. Squad, to all members, meet me in front of the fire store. All walking in. Bring a 20 portable in front of this store. Division 6, Engine 75. 19 to Division 6, urgent. Go ahead, 19. Yeah, we have reports now of a total of 5 in the basement. We have 1 in the process coming out. We got 4 more down there. Okay, 10-4. Division 6 to squad 4-1. Go ahead with your message. Hey, that number we thought we had, it's debris in the hole. We're going around the other side. Because of the collapse, we cannot accept it from this area. All right, go find the back. Well, we found him, the officer, 75 engine. We're in contact with him. We're talking to him. We're in the process trying to get him out. All right, is he in track or just separated from the engine? That's the confirmation is we have a fireman underneath the officer from 75. It's imperative there's a fireman underneath the officer from 75. Call 4 Adams, Rescue Battalion. I have the backup from 75 engine. I have the officer from 44, and we have the chief. They're all trapped from their waist down. They're all conscious and alert at this time. We're operating to get them removed.
All right, 4 Adam to rescue George. Ask if he knows what a nozzle man is from 75.
I'm sorry, Chief, can you repeat that? Rescue 3, it is affirmative. We are working on it now, okay? 10-4. Saying there's 2 people.
So what happened when the floor collapsed, the guys at the front of the line, the probie fell into the hole, and the officer fell on top of him. Engine 75, the Mayday, was the boss calling. They were able to remove the other 3 guys. They were able to remove the other 3 guys because only 3 of them were trapped from about the waist down. But it took an hour and a half to remove everybody from that fire. So, you know, September 11th, January 23rd, 2005, August 27th, 2006, my box is filling up. This box inside my head is filling up, right? And it's affected me, you know, over the years. At that fire, I was in the stretcher in the ambulance, and I borrowed the paramedic's phone, and I called my wife, and I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. The box is filling. So, took some time off after that fire again, went to work, and what happened was down at the trade center, sometime later. Because they had covered up West Street so quickly to get traffic going, they wanted to open up downtown Manhattan at the center of the universe. They started finding out that they had paved over body parts. And they were finding body parts underneath the roadway. So they started doing some confined space entries on West Street, across the street from the Trade Center. So we're a confined space trained company, so we had to go down there to stand by one day. And on August 18th, 2007, just happened to be across the street from the Deutsch fire, where another 2 firefighters died. Joe Graffinino and Robert Badia from Engine 2-4 and Ladder 5.
Are you guys operating out of the beach stairwell? They're reporting that we got water at the beach stairwell. Command to the unit that was reporting there was water in the beach stairwell. Want to get back on here? Negative, there's no water in the beach stairwell. What we're going to drop down a search rope from 14 and see if we can stretch a line up on the outside of the building, okay?
So what happened on September 11th, this is a picture of the Deutsche Bank building. It was heavily, heavily damaged from the collapse. And you'd see parts of the Trade Center building in it. And some years down the road, they decided that they were going to take this building down because it was never, they never re-entered the building. They never repaired it. It had too much asbestos, so they were doing asbestos abatement. And how they did that was they started all the way at the top and they removed it floor by floor. And depending on what level of abatement you were at, depending on what that floor looked like. They had closed, if you had asbestos abatement for anything, you know, it's a tight sealed unit. They can't let any of that air out. There has to be negative pressure and all that. The way that they situated each floor was, it was pretty much totally enclosed with plywood and this wrap around it. The contractors, they could only take the elevator. They had an exterior elevator. It was the only way to get from floor to floor. They had the stairwells covered over in plywood, and then this mesh cover, again, to stop the asbestos from going through. So you couldn't go from floor to floor, which was a problem. Trying to gain access to where the fire was. The contractors cut the standpipe system down in the basement so that they can run their power and air lines up through the standpipe riser. So the standpipe wasn't working, and that's where that radial transmission comes from. They thought they had water in the B stairwell, but there was no water to be had at this building. It took over an hour to get a water source, and they did what they brought the water from the outside of the building.
Control, come in.
This is what it looked like on the outside. Heavy fire coming up the outside. I think that's the south side of the building.
Well, also, when the elevator be stays on the 15th, in case we got to vacate it, we have heavy fire up there with no line. Can you down the stairwells? Alright, you got your message. Go ahead. Battalion, be advised, we got a truck down to 14. We're blowing windows out on the, I'm not sure what side of all, but we're blowing the windows out. We're out there. I got the inside view of me, south side of the building. Engine 7, Mayday, Battalion 1. Stand by down.
Alright, get back here now. It's on the line up. Recon right. Go back with the line. ASAP. Double up.
We have a roll call finished up there. I don't give a shit about the building. I give a shit about the guys. Do we have a roll call? Do we know who's missing? So far, it's another contact. Line of 15, officer, line of 15, 10.
Say that we're building on a scaffold. The south front of the building, Jay.
10-4. Mike, go ahead. This is command. Go ahead.
Okay, engine 10 is accounted for.
All right, 10-4, Mike. Mike, if we have engine 4, engine 10, ladder 10, ladder 15, rescue squad, and battalion 2 confirm. Let's get everybody down below this fire, and it will start all over again. I want to make sure we have everybody accounted for.
4-1. Urgent. That's why the division was urgent. Here with the Mayday. I'm lost for trying to make it out the door. Running out of there. Just in with an urgent. Where are you? Here while you need help. You're out. Squad troopers on the 10th floor. Stay down there.
Command battalion 2.
Battalion 2.
Roll back down to where you came up.
At this number on the scout keeper, we're trying to count for the missing number from rescue 210.
Command to Division 1-1. Mike, what's your urgent message?
I got a number down. Trying to get him out here on the 14th floor. The health alarm is going off. Not responsive.
Mike, what floor are you on? I'm concerned right now. Everybody down below the fire. We barely got water, and I need to account for everybody. Doing a good job. How many more do we got to get down to the 14th floor? Who have we not accounted for?
We got the number now. We're bringing it down on the floor. Make sure they got EMS. He's out of here. I do not know who's above 14, but that one member that we removed was on 14. We have unconfirmed maybe another member on 14.
Mike, do we have anything? Is anybody identifying anybody by any unit number, anything?
Engine 2-4, no names.
Mayday.
Together with the Mayday.
Engine 3 with a Mayday. I have unconscious fireman.
1-1.
Engine 1-1, Mayday.
And to Division 1-1, go ahead.
Okay, we have the
Kevin, shut down that line in the street. Shut it down. Mike, everybody get off the primary channel. Command to Division 1-1. Mike, what's your location with the down member?
You're on my ass. The both side of the building is number 4th floor.
What's up?
You retain to command. We need fresh bodies up here. We can't move this guy.
Trying to get bodies up there. Command to Division 1-1. Listen, Mike, I don't want nobody on the fucking floors anymore. No one thing. I need an accounting. Do you have the officers up there from 4, 10, 10, and 15?
Squad 4-1, the GK. We have both stairways to A B has access to the 14th floor now. You're trying to go up the B stairway. You're having difficulty with the segmented partitions that are on the floors. You're in the process of trying to cut them now. We're going to try and take the team up, about 3 up on the A stairway. And we're going to squad 4-1 as well. And we'll see if we can access that floor for us to facilitate opening the A stairway.
A lot going on. I think there were 32 maydays or urgent messages given at that fire. Took them over an hour to get water. We were standing across the street watching it happen because we were assigned to do this confined space. And we told the contractor to shut it down. We're going across the street. So we went across the street. And when we finally got an assignment from the incident commander, they sent us up to the 14th floor through the exterior elevator. The guys running the elevators were the construction guys. These guys were feet and a feet going up and down in the elevators. And again, you can only go floor to floor on the outside. You couldn't access 14 to 15. So we had heard them trying to cut through the roof, and they were using their partner saws, their gas-powered saws, and we knew they weren't going to work. So we brought up our sawzalls so that we'd be able to cut through the plywood. And they gave us our assignment, and we went in the elevator. And again, you know, somebody has to take a step back and, you know, listen to everything that's going on. We had a covering boss that day. I was the senior man. The guys were kind of looking to me for a little bit of guidance. When we got in the elevator, when they told us to go to the 14th floor, somebody jumped in the elevator and goes, the elevator said, guys, what floor are you going to? The guy says, 14. Oh, we're not going to 14. You never go to the fire floor. We're going to go to 12. Well, you can't get up from there. You know what? We'll find a way to get up there. So we got off on 12, and then we found the 2 stairwells. We made it up to 13, and then we were working our way to 14. And we split up in 2 teams, 3 of us on one side and 3 of us on the other. And we cut through the plywood in the stairwell. And when we came out on the other side of the plywood into that area, into that stairwell, right outside there, we found one of the guys from 24 Engine's helmet. Right? At this time, they had already been removed from the building. But at some point, you know, later on, well, if we would have got assigned a little bit quicker, maybe we wouldn't have been able to get up there faster, maybe we wouldn't have been able to get to them a little bit sooner, second guessing everything. So that was September 11th, January 23rd, 2005, August 27th, 2006, August 18th, 2007. My son had been born about 3 months previous to that. The box is filling. The officer from 24 Engine that lost the 2 guys wind up retiring and not coming back. He retired in 2009. And in 2011, his son found him hanging in a shed in the back of their house. So, but it's not all bad. I'm going to try and lighten it up a little bit. I'm going to show you, you know, the photos of me going to all the fires that I went for a little while. You know, that's me right there. Look at me. All right, cutting the roof up on a fire escape. Your ever-present buddy shots, right? We always want to have those buddy shots because we want those memories of what it is that we do together. The guy in the right there, the officer, that's Mickey Conboy, the officer I was telling you about on the roof at that earlier fire. The greatest firefighter I have ever worked with in my entire lifetime. The man's amazing. Not only was he knowledgeable and skilled and experienced, he made you want to be better every time you went to work. Another shot. Man, look how handsome that guy is. Right, honey? She's still here. This picture was in July of 2007, where myself and the lieutenant were able to remove 2 people from a store called the Bodega in the neighborhood. The door was shut on the outside, locked on the outside, but the owner was there telling there's 2 people in there. They did security at night. They had a little mezzanine in the back that they would sleep in because it was a bad neighborhood and they kept getting broken into. So again, even though the exterior, it's locked from the outside, we had somebody telling us that there were 2 people in there. They actually said there were 3 people in there. We were able to get in, we were able to find 2 of the guys, and they both survived. So one of the other great days in your career is when you get promoted. Okay, special day, July 1st, 2009. I had been a firefighter for about 15 years already. Still didn't think I was ready to get promoted. Still thought I had a lot to learn. But as long as you think that there's more, you can always get better. You can always get better at this job. At that time when I got promoted, I was the last guy, except 2 guys that had got to Squad 41 3 weeks before September 11th. So I was the last guy when I got promoted. That in itself took a toll on me. It wasn't my firehouse anymore. You know, everybody else was new in the last 8 years, and they all brought their things to the firehouse, and I was trying to keep things so traditional there that it wasn't working for me, and I had to leave. But it was on a good note because I got promoted, right? It's always a good thing. So I got promoted, and then I wound up getting promoted and working in 43 engine. Oh, how all this circles around. My dad's best friend was a lieutenant in his firehouse in 43 engine. And when I was a teenager, I used to go hang out at the firehouse and ride on a truck with these guys. Now, 20-something years later, I'm an officer in this firehouse in charge of some of the guys that were there when I was 16 years old. So a lot of history there, real good place. They're actually coming out with a model, like a Code 3 model of this truck. The guys took a lot of pride in it. We would actually get in a lot of trouble because they painted so much on that truck when they would bring it to the shops. We'd get phone calls all the time. You guys got to stop doing this. But it looked really cool. And probably one of the best things in an engine company that you can show is your hose bed. Right? That says a million things are right there about how you feel about your company. Well, the Sedgwick Slashers. Even all this going on, you know, PTSD is real. I mean, we're going to go into the other part to the, you know, we're done with all the fires now. We're done with all the fires. But this silent injury, right? And Paul Combs, who does these cartoons, if you're not familiar with him, fire engineering, firehouse, he does it for a whole bunch of stuff. He's spot on with a lot of the stuff that he does. Paul is a very good friend. So he said it was okay for me to use all this stuff, but that's so true right there. You know, what's inside here will never heal from that day. So one night, I'm sitting home with my wife on a couch, and we're watching a movie. This movie's called Stop Loss. And for military guys, you'll understand what that is. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Well, anyway, I guess Magic Mike there. And I can't remember the other guy's name. What happened was the one guy, he goes AWOL because he doesn't want to go back. And they're all mad at him because he wasn't going to go back. So this is one of their friends got killed in battle, and they're there after the funeral, and there's some language in here, so.
Please, tell me. Tell me what you've been thinking, because nothing in the last few days had made any fucking sense to me at all.
You know that box inside your head? That box inside your head where you put all the bad shit you can't deal with? Well, mine's full.
And it's spilling out. Steve, it's full of all the people I got killed. Preacher. Randy. Harvey. Thomas.
God, the rest I've lost in this fucked up war.
Think how many people would have fucking died if you wouldn't have been there, including me. Steve, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I fucked up!
I watched that scene. I turned to my wife, and I said, that's exactly how I've been feeling for the last couple of years, and I could never explain it except for that scene right there in that movie. That this box that's been filling up with all those things for such a long time, it has to go somewhere. You let it fill up, it's going to come out in bad ways. So over the years, again, it's 2011 now, on and off my medication, back and forth again. Every time I come off my medication, I get worse. It's November, early November mid-November of 2001, and I'm having a really bad day. And we had a fight, and my wife says, I'm done. If you don't do something, I'm out of here, and I'm bringing Griffin with us. So I drove straight to the counseling unit. I had to work that night. I drove straight to the counseling unit, which was an hour in the other direction of going to work. And I walked into the counseling unit, and this is where I first came in contact with peer support. I walked in, I was a mess. I said, I got to talk to a therapist. Neither one of them were available at that point. I had one of the peers come over and start talking to me, and I lost my shit. I was a mess. Crying, hysterical, telling them, and I'm telling them all about, not September 11th, you know, I'm talking about the Black Sunday fire, where I watched these guys jump out this window, because that's what's in my head right now, right? And that's the thing that's bothering me the most. Out of all the things that happened in my career, from when I was 17 years old to that accident on the highway, when I was a police officer doing CPR on a 3-month-old baby, to September 11th, those are just the big things. Think of all the things that we all do every single day. EMS, police, fire, dispatchers. You know how dispatchers feel when they're taking calls on stuff like this. Think about how that dispatcher felt in Polk County not too long ago, where she's on the phone with the lady in the house while the fire department is outside. But it's not, it's that one thing that came out that day for some reason. And I was talking to the therapist. I finally get to see a therapist because I'm in such bad shape. I'm in crisis. And she's like, okay, I'm going to put you on light duty. I'm like, light duty? I got to go to work in those hours. You know? And the firemen will understand when we want to go to work. She's like, you can't go to work like this. I'm like, I got to go to work. You know, I'm going to mess up somebody else's day if I don't show up for work right now, because he's got to go pick up his kids at baseball or something like that. I'm like, listen, I'll make you a deal. Let me go to work tonight, and I promise I'll come back next week. Okay. So I went to work, and I was okay. And then I'm looking at the next slide. Is on November 22nd, a couple of days after I was in that crisis, Joey DiBernardo, one of the guys that jumped out the window at the Black Sunday fire, overdosed on some pain medicine, and he passed away. So I got to go back. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm trying to not to lose it again. Now, I got to go back to the therapist that day, afterwards. And so, how was your week? Oh, you feeling any better? No. You know, one of my good friends from that fire just died the other day. And there's this box filling up again. So, a couple of days later, it's Joey's funeral. We get together with a lot of friends. And I didn't know the man, but the guy on the far right, on the end there, that's Rich Nappy. Okay, I had never met Rich Nappy. He was friends with all the other guys in the picture. But that was at Joey D's funeral in November of 2011. About 6 months later, Rich Nappy died at a fire in Brooklyn. So, I always like this quote at The Rock at Rescue School. We had our own academy inside the fire academy. And this was a Winston Churchill quote. To each, there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted to their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which should have been their finest hour. Now that sat with me a lot because of what I saw on September 12th about somebody having a job to do and not doing that. That resonated with me because at the Black Sunday fire, I saw guys breaking down in the backyard that froze. Fight, flight, or freeze. I saw guys doing that. And I didn't want to become one of those guys. So here's my quote you guys all see. I'm not here for me, I'm here for we, and we are here for them. So, are you prepared to perform when you do your job every day? Because you can't let us down. Because if you let us down, something's going to happen. I need you to know your job, and I need you to do your job. Because what happened to me, what started happening to me was, as I went to therapy, I had immersion therapy, is what the therapist called it. And what that was that I had to tell that Black Sunday story over and over and over and over again, until from my number started at 100 until it went down to less than 10. Because I told the story so much, it didn't affect me as much. We have to empty this box inside. We have to talk to people about the things that happen to us, the things that we see. And we're able to do some of those things because I had some respect, okay? But in order for me to have respect, I earned it from the guys that I worked with, and then I returned it to them. And that's what gave me the ability to do some of the things I could do as a boss. Your reputation on the fire department is everything. You spend your first decade making your reputation. You spend your second decade proving your reputation. And you spend the third decade of your career living off your reputation. Okay? I was into my third decade. I did almost 22 years. But I didn't want to be the last to know. All right? I didn't want to be the guy like in August of 2001, and they said, you got to go see somebody because you're not good. I didn't want to be the last one to know that I couldn't do my job anymore because of all this stuff that happened to me was accumulating up here and in here and in here. And I felt like I couldn't do the job physically anymore, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. It was starting to wear on me. And I wanted to make that decision. I didn't want to have somebody else tell me that. Because all this stuff happens to you is cumulative. It's not the last thing that gets you. It's everything else before that, and that one thing at that time triggers something that brings all of this out. It's a combination of all the stuff that's gone on in your career that every single one in this room has seen. And you need to get it out. I try to... It's like if you have a glass and you fill up the glass of water and you're filling it, and then when you put so much water in it, it starts to overflow over the sides, and that's messy, right? But if you had like a spigot on the bottom of it, like down where your mouth is, and you opened up the spigot and didn't allow that container to fill up all the time, you wouldn't have this mess flowing out the top. So this is your spigot. This is what you have to do. You have to talk about this stuff. I do this because it helps me. So through therapy and medication, I was able to do some things. At one point in my therapy career, I had my therapist say to me, you know, there's only 2 scenarios you have left in your career. Okay, what's that? Either one of your guys dies at a fire or you die at a fire. Whew. Wow, I don't like those choices. I need a new therapist or I need a new job. That was kind of funny. So I actually did both, right? I knew that, see, when I got on the fire department, since I was a little kid, I wanted to do 35 years and retire battalion chief. And when it took me 3 times to pass the lieutenant's test, I realized that I wasn't that smart. So I was going to have to think of something that I had to do with 20 years. So I enjoyed teaching so much that I went back to college at 45 years old to get an associate's degree so I can put it on a resume because I heard about this really good department that really supports education. And I wanted to have that on my resume when I was looking for another job because I didn't think that you could write on your resume, "I'm really good at breaking shit." I didn't think people would understand that. So I started to think, am I a burden to the people that I'm working with, can I do the job? And what happened, I started thinking to myself, I did not want to be unable to perform if somebody got hurt. And because I could not perform physically or emotionally or psychologically, however, to not be able to help that person that needed help. I would not be able to live with myself if something happened to that person. On the other side, if something happened to me, because I was physically, emotionally, psychologically unable to do my job anymore, and something happened to me, and somebody had to come and get me, and they died coming to get me, I would not be able to live with that either. So over the years, the self-therapy of some things that I changed my uniform of work. Even when I was a police officer, I did not bring that home with me. I had a lot of work. I changed. I went in civilian clothes. When I left, I was a civilian. Okay? Because you bring it, you bring those things home with you. While I was doing all this, I was thinking about police officers in the state of South Carolina. They all bring their cars home with them. You never get a break. How is that emotionally or psychologically to them too? Did they never get to turn it off? I wonder how much that affects them. So emptying the box, which we've talked about. I had to empty my box. I have to talk about it. You have to talk about it. You can't let it fill up. When it spills out, it's too late. Okay? Whatever it is, drugs, alcohol, women, whatever it is, it's going to be something and it's not going to be good. I checked out. I was a bump on a log at the time. I wouldn't help my wife with my son. I wouldn't do anything around the house. I would just sleep all day long. And I was no help to her whatsoever. So, but what also helped me is that I lived 65 miles away from New York City, and then going to that map again, where'd you live in the city? I didn't even live anywhere near the city. I couldn't afford to live in New York City. So I lived 65 miles away. It took me 2 hours to get to work, 65 miles. It took me 1 hour to go the first 60 miles and another hour to go the last 5 miles. And you talk about how bad traffic is in Charleston. But those 2-hour drives to work and home, most of the time on home, I would think about stuff and I would call my friends. That was my time to call everybody that I knew that I could talk to. And I would call some really good friends of mine and tell them things were happening with me and how I was feeling and how they helped me through all those things. Gallagher, if you're listening. Aaron, if you're listening. A lot of other people with on-scene training associates that helped me through a lot of things with this, just by talking to me on the phone. There's about 20 people in this room right now that I feel the same about. One of the things that I remember was that I was at the counseling unit going to see the therapist, and some other guy came in and he was trying to hide from me. And I'm like, why is this guy trying to hide from me? He didn't want me to see him in the therapy office. So I saw him not too long. I'm like, dude, we're there for the same reason. It's okay. If I'm there, you're there, we can acknowledge to each other that we're there for the same reason. You don't have to be shy about this and you don't have to hide. And when you're the person that can talk about it, and then you share it with other people, the other people are going to share it with you or with others, and that's what's going to help. You have to get it out. So I decided to retire. 2015, I applied for a job in North Charleston. Offers a job. So this is my last tour, December 6th, 2015. Those are all my probies. Those are all the new guys. So the old school and new school. Right? Notice the sneakers. We're a little relaxed in the Bronx. But that was my last night. So it was, the tradition of that is that you have a big meal. Everybody comes and celebrates with you and to see you off. So I had a nice career in 43. It was a lot of fun. And again, you know, the circle of it where at 16 years old, I was hanging out in this firehouse. And now I'm plus years in my career and I'm a lieutenant in the same firehouse. So right before we finished up the tour, because I rode till 9 o'clock, I wanted to catch that last job. Couldn't be relieved early. I had to get one more in before I retired. And at the end of the day, it was 9 o'clock in the morning, we took this photo outside the firehouse. And when I got in my car and drove away, every single one of those guys was standing in front of the firehouse clapping, saying bye, bye. So this was the same night, okay? How everything in here relates to it. This guy on the left here, I was going to say the guy with the mustache, but the guy with the old mustache, that's my dad's best friend, Richie Goldstein. He was the one that was a lieutenant in that firehouse and came to my party on my last night. The guy with the hat on, that's Mickey Conboy. Okay? That's that lieutenant that I worked with for all those years. I drove with him for 7 years while he was a lieutenant in Squad 41. He's now in Rescue 3. I'm not sure he might, I'm not even going to say it. Mickey just got this year, actually 2018, just got the highest medal you can get in the New York City Fire Department for a rescue that he made in 2017. Best fireman ever. Oh, and one of your traditions is that when guys retire, they buy gifts for the firehouse. So at that time, there were a lot of guys who had either retired or got promoted, and they decided it was time for a new table inside the firehouse. So all these guys got together, and we had a table party, and it's a really beautiful table. It's hand carved, and the guy who did the work was amazing. But another story that's ironic about this table is that my name is on this table, and it replaced the table in the kitchen of 43 and 59. Richie Goldstein was on when he got promoted and bought a table for that firehouse too. So carrying on the traditions of the fire department. So then it was official. It was official. Retirement date, 12/9/2015. And that was it. I was done. I survived. I survived the job. But I lived my dream. Okay, it was a dream of mine to be a New York City firefighter. It was my choice to leave. I miss it every day. I really do. If I could still do it, I wouldn't have left because I liked it and it was fun. But I didn't. I knew I wasn't doing anybody good anymore. But I knew I had a lot more to give. And I love training and I wanted to be involved, and that's why I applied for this job down here, and I was lucky enough to get it. And going back a little bit, what happened in 2010, a guy I worked for with On-Scene Training Associates, he was hired by the Charleston Fire Department to come down and train with you guys. And that's Chief Carr in the middle, right there. Passed away a couple years ago, right? But while I was down here doing that training, I met some really great people that I'm still friendly with today. And how ironic it is that I wind up right back down here again. And one of those people that I met who wound up started training with us for the training company was E.J. Mascaro. And E.J. and I became very good friends once he started teaching for us. And he called me up one day and he's like, hey, we're hiring. Okay. So I put in for it. And then he went and talked to Chief McDowell and told him what a great guy I was. Schmoozed him over a little bit. But I was lucky enough to get this job. So my more to give turned into coming down here and being a training officer in North Charleston. I call that everybody but me gangsta photo. I didn't realize when we were taking that picture that it was like we were going to be hard. And I was smiling because I'm happy to be here. You know, I got Bill Merritt in there. I got Chris Gordon, Chris Gay. You know, but I'm happy as a clam because I love being here. So, North Charleston Fire Department has been good to me so far. But like everything else in life, I was here for 1 year, and on January 19th, 2017, EJ was killed in a car accident. Here goes my box again. Starting to fill up. EJ was the reason I was down here. He was the reason that I came here. I think he brought me here for a reason. What happened after EJ's accident, they had a hot wash at Station 4 at everybody that was involved in the accident scene. And a lot of guys from the peer team came and started. They wanted everybody to talk, and nobody was saying anything. And I was just here a year, so I started. And I let everybody know about the relationship I had with EJ and why I was here and what made me come here. And from that, I go back to that other thing, reputation, respect. I was able to get people to talk that day. And then more people talked, and then some people went beyond that and went for services, and that's what I need you to do. It's okay. It's okay to do it. This is a really hard day. That was a hard day. So what I learned about me over the years is that I knew I had issues, but I really didn't know how bad it was until I retired and came down here, because I felt like I wasn't around people that understood anymore. I felt like because I was still in the fire department and I was still in the New York City Fire Department, even though 75% of the job at that time had gotten on the job after September 11th, the day I was just with my people. I was with my peers. I was with my people. My people understand me. My family was still in New York. I stopped my medication. I don't know why, but there again, it got worse again. So I reached out to somebody here, and he put me in touch with some other people, and I got back on some medication, and I got back in some therapy. And all these red shirts right here are a huge help to me. And I appreciate all you guys. So right now, there's over 1,000 members that have a diagnosed illness that has to deal with September 11th, anything from September 11th from the Trade Center. There's over 180 deaths so far. The people that have died. I am scared to death that there is something wrong with me. And for a really long time, I let that overtake me. And I learned something the other day from somebody: don't be a victim. But there's yearly monitoring, and we get tested every year to make sure everything's okay. But what helped me the most is when I started getting involved with these people. Because now I have an outlet for this, for me to be able to do this. And I read a book not too long ago. It's called Tribe by Sebastian Junger. I'll read the quote. "We have a strong instinct to belong to small groups defined by a clear purpose and understanding. Regaining it may be the key to psychological survival." Okay? The way I relate that is that we're best when we're with our people. Okay? Those are the people that understand us. There's pros and cons to that. I'll get into that in a minute. But what I thought was a place where nobody would understand me down here became a place of so much more understanding. That you guys understand me so much more than anybody else. So, as peers, can you guys raise your hands for me, please? Anybody who's in a peer group? Anybody, any therapists here? Okay, all right. We feel comfortable in our tribe, in our group of people. And what makes us feel comfortable is that we have all that same mindset, that same mentality. They relate it to a lot to soldiers at war, right? I don't want to take anything away from that. I never got shot at. Well, just one time in the South Bronx, but it was. But we feel comfortable with our people, but that's not the only thing. We feel comfortable in it, and we joke around. And when we joke around, we feel good. But are we really getting out what's working? what's bothering us? Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, because we feel different when we're with our people. But it's easier to start that conversation when we're with our people. Right? So if you can get that person to help you to start that conversation, you're on the right step. The next step is going to see a clinician. Because the firefighters don't think they want to understand us. And that's why we're going to go to the peers. And I can tell you that that's wrong. The therapists think that we're not going to talk in front of you because you can never understand what it is that we've been through. And I'm going to tell you that's a horrible, horrible thing, a horrible way to think, because now they don't understand. But what they do, whether it's a peer or a clinician, is that they listen without judgment. They will listen to everything that you have to say and might not say a word, because you need to empty that box. It's not about them understanding what's going on. It's about them sitting across from you and listening to you tell your story that needs to come out. Whether they understand it or not, that's not their job. A therapist is not going to be a topper. You guys don't understand what that means. They're not going to tell you, once you tell your story, they're not going to tell you another one they think is worse. Okay? A therapist is not going to say, I've been through this before. A therapist is not going to say, a therapist is going to listen to you. They are going to listen to your story so that you can get everything out of that box, which is the best thing that can happen for you in order to get better. They give you an outlet. It starts with peers. And the next step is counseling. And I'm alive today because of peers and counselors. So, Paul Combs, again, this is one of his cartoons. Oh, you're a firefighter. That's really cool. Don't believe that hype. What's the worst thing you ever saw? And all these ghosts behind him saying, which one of us are you going to tell him about? Paul's a friend of mine. Paul told me it was okay to do this. Those are actual people that haunt Paul's mind, especially the little girl. So does the public not understand us? Sometimes. Why we go to peer counselors? Because you understand us. And when we realize that it's not about that you don't understand us, it's about that we have to get this out and speak about it, is when we can start to heal. So, which gets me to the post-traumatic growth part of it, all right? There's no more suck it up, kid. We don't do that. We don't do that anymore, right? You need to talk about this stuff. You got to stop filling a box, okay? And if stopping filling the box means that you need to go find to do something else, that might be what it is, okay? That's what I chose to do. My therapist told me I had 2 scenarios left in my career. I didn't like either one of them. Like Chief said earlier, there are more suicides than line of duty. I think it's almost double every year, okay? Because only 40% of them are reported. So think about that. There's probably 200 suicides a year, and that's only 40% of them. I don't want to do the math. I'm not that smart. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's not that guy in that cartoon that's going, I need help. That's not the guy that needs the most help. The guy that needs the most help is the guy like these two. Okay? Like Matt Negedley on the left with the blonde hair, who was the funniest man I've ever, almost as funny as Chris Gay. But I heard stories about that guy. He had a smile on his face all the time. He was the jokester. He was the guy doing everything. He was always, always happy. Until he drove down a dirt road one day and shot himself and left a wife and 4-year-old twins. It's like P.J. Johnson, who worked with us on-scene training associates, that was a jokester. What a character that guy was. That a lot of us didn't know. I didn't know PJ as well as some of the guys on scene did. But he was a funny guy who decided that he couldn't deal with his demons anymore and drove 100 miles an hour into a bridge above him with a seatbelt on, leaving a wife and a couple of kids. So it goes both ways. It's not just that guy crying out for help too. It's the person that you might never think. The person that you might never think is going to happen. Because the best thing that we can do is we can remember our brothers by talking about these things. Okay? It's not good for me to keep it inside. It's not good for us to not talk about it. We have to remember these things and why some of these things happen. I will always remember the 343 firefighters. You'll remember that. I'll always remember the Charleston 9. Okay? Because there's something that's making us do this. And I don't know, can you see that? Anybody see what that is? Yes, no? You look over here. It's closer. It looks like Jesus. That's one of my old helmets from when I was a volley in New Jersey. For some reason, I don't know, I was cleaning out. I guess it was when we were moving, and I saw it, and it looks like a picture of Jesus. It's really weird. So, another really old quote from here is that a fireman knocked at the heavenly gate. His face was scarred and old. He stood before the man of fate for admission to the fold. What have you done, St. Peter said, to gain admission here? I've been a firefighter, sir, he said, for many, many years. The pearly gates swung open wide as St. Peter touched the bell. Come in and choose your heart, my son. You've seen your share of hell. I've seen my share of hell. We have seen our share of hell. The only way that we're going to get better, if I can ask you to do anything, anybody in this room or anybody that's listening right now, is that you need to talk about this. You can't bottle it up inside. It has to come out. If you fill up that box, it will ruin you. It will ruin you. Please talk. So I want to thank everybody for coming out here today. I really appreciate you listening to me. A lot of happy faces here. I was real nervous in the beginning, but you guys make me calm down. I've got a lot of support on doing this. Thanks for the Low Country guys. Gerald, thanks for putting this all together. I think this might be the beginning of something. I'm more than willing to do whatever it is that we need to do to get people help. So, thank you. Thanks. Thank you, pal. How do you do?
Good. Can I use that in a minute?
You can use that. That one's on.